Going to introduce you to a game called Tumbleweed, show you how to play the game. The idea behind the game of Tumbleweed is that you are a tumbleweed tank, a tank-like rover, and you are exploring a planet looking for valuable resources. You've been sent there by the corporation. Now, the nice thing about a tumbleweed tank is that you don't need fuel other than wind. And these planets you tend to research looking for these resources are filled with these winds. So you'll be collecting that wind along the way to help your tumbleweed tank move, and you'll be looking for those resources. Now, the first piece is to determine how many players are going to be playing the game. Once you've determined how many players, you're actually going to take the cards. These are the map board cards. They'll be the cards with the brown back there, the flashy gold back. And you're going to flip them over, and at the top of each card is a number. So at the top of this card is the number 4. This card right here, it's the number 2. After you know how many players are playing the game, you will take out, if there's 2 players, you're going to take out all of the 1s and the 2s. If there's 3 players playing the game, you'll take out all the 1s, 2s, and 3s. If there's 4 players playing the game, then you'll use all of the map board cards. Tumbleweed is a game for 2 to 4 players. So that's the first part of the setup, is taking out all of those cards that you're going to be using again. 1, 2s, and 3s for 3 players, 1s and 2s for 2 players, and all the cards for 4 players. And then setting up a map board like so. So for a 3 or 4 player game, it is actually a 5 by 5. That's 5 columns and 5 rows, making a nice little grid. And that's what your board will look like for a 3 or 4 player game. The next piece is to determine who is going to be which colors. Now the decks have different colors going to them. There's the green deck, here's the purple deck, and each deck has a tank that matches their deck color. So each player chooses what color deck they're going to be. Okay? And then players are going to take turns placing their tanks next to the board. They're each going to pick a corner, and it doesn't matter if it goes here or if it were to go there, but they're going to pick a corner. So we'll set all these tanks up as if they're ready to play the game. Okay. Now, a game turn in Tumbleweed consists of one of 3 different options. There are 3 different choices a player has. They can either play a card, and there are 3 types of cards that can be played from the hand: a movement card, a fire card, or a dust storm card. If it's a fire or dust storm card that's played, that card is discarded. If it's a movement card, that card's going to be placed in front of the player, and it can actually be played later. Now, when a player plays a movement card, so these are the cards, these cards you started with, these are the cards that you're actually going to use for movement. Each player is going to start with turn right, and a turn left, a move forward, and turn right, turn left, move forward 1, and a move forward 2, and then a fire forward. We're going to get to the fires in just a second. But let's say I'm the tumbleweed tank. I'm the first player to go. I'm facing in this direction here. I'm going to play a move to forward card. Now that comes out of my hand. It's going to be laid out in front of me, and I can actually recover that card later. I'm going to go 2 spaces forward. Now in Tumbleweed, when you land on a card, that card stays face down. But when you come off of that card, when you move off that card's actually going to go face up on the board. So the green tank moved 2 forward. It then went here, moved off onto the second card, and when it moved off to this first card, then that card actually flipped over. Now, this card is now available to be gathered by a player later. We'll get into the gathering piece next. Players take turns moving around. Now, or players take turns taking an action. Movement can be one of those actions if you decide to play a card. The second option is a fire card. Let's say this tumbleweed tank over here had decided to move 1 space on their turn. So their card was in front of them. And maybe on the next turn, the green player decided to use a fire forward card. Now, a fire forward is played and discarded from the game. Okay, it's discarded from the game, but when a player fires forward, they hit the tank in front of them. The green tank, because it fired forward, hitting the red tank, gains a +1 victory point card, while the red tank, being hit by the fire shot, gets a -1 victory point card. Those cards are going to be added up at the end of the game. Player with most victory points is going to be the winner. But that's one way you score victory points. The other way is through resources. Now, fire is the second option. The third option is actually a dust storm card. Now, when a dust storm is flipped up, it will have a number on it. There are only 4 dust storm cards in a 4-player game, but that number, so this is a 4, that number will destroy all face-up cards with the number 4 on the board. So if there was a bunch of cards flipped over here, we'll say some tanks have been rolling around, flipping cards up, maybe they hadn't been gathered yet, and all the cards with the number 4 are destroyed. So this turnaround right here, if a player were to play this dust storm from their hand, then this number 4 turnaround card would be destroyed. When a card is destroyed from a dust storm, it is placed in the discard, removed from the game, and then the spot that it came from is replaced with a face-down map card. So this dust storm would be used. It works like a fire. It's removed from the game. Okay. So 3 different cards you can play if you choose to play a card for your action, and that would be a movement, a fire, or a dust storm. Movements can be recovered later, and fires and dust storms are removed from the game. Now, the other option is to gather resources or wind. So let's say this little turnaround card was right behind the green tank, and the green tank plays some cards and manages to move around and land back on this space. We're going to talk about how they were able to do that, even though they've used their cards here, in just a second. But if they move around and land on this space, they're going to have an opportunity to gather that resource or that movement. So how they got here, though, facing in this direction, was, let's say they moved 2 cards forward. On their next turn, they then turned right, okay? And then on their next turn, they said, I'm going to recover my hand. I'm going to regenerate the energy that my Tumbleweed tank has. So I'm going to take all my cards that I played for movement, and I'm going to put them back into my hand. That takes up my entire turn to recover these cards back into my hand. Okay? But doing so, on my next turn, I'll be allowed to turn right again, and now I'm facing towards that turnaround that I might want to use to help me move better in the game more efficiently. So, and then on the next turn, it would be 1 move forward. Now, it seems to take a lot of turns, but these turns move really quick because each player is only taking 1 action, so you really don't wait around too long for your turn to happen in the game. So I play 1 move forward, and then I land on the tank. So that second action you can take is that recover, being able to put those hands back into your hand so you can move again. Okay? And again, all the movements can do that, but not the fires or the dust storms. Now the third option is to gather that resource or wind. So we turned around, we've ended back up on this card here, and now we're going to gather it. So one of the options would be I'm going to gather the resources of the wind I'm on, so I'm going to gather this resource, or this wind, this movement. This card then goes directly in to the hand of that player, and it can be used on the next turn as play a card, as a movement, or as a fire or dust storm if it was that. So then on the next turn, I could use that turnaround and turn the tank around, and then on the next turn, I would do 2 moves forward. Now, this spot stays empty while the tank occupies that spot, but once I go 2 moves forward, 1, 2, I'm going to flip this over because I landed off of that card, and then I'm going to replace this empty spot with a face-down map card because I left this space. So when your tank occupies an empty space, that spot stays empty until your tank moves from that spot. Now, of course, the point of the game isn't just to gather movement and move around and shoot each other. You're also looking for these resources along the way. So the way you collect resources is to just be on there and then gather them like you would a movement card. But then they go in front of the player as victory points at the end of the game. Each resource card, so it could be purple rocks in this case, is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. The more resources you have, the better chance you have of gaining bonus victory points. The person with the most rocks is going to get some bonus points. The person with the most ore is going to get some bonus victory points. The person with the most dust is also going to get some victory points. Okay, so there's some ore. That's what that looks like. Okay, lots of different things you can get. There's some dust right there. So these are resources you want to gain. 1 victory point apiece plus the bonus points. And the person with the most And then you add in the victory points from firing on each other as well. So if you have those +1 victory point cards, that'll help add to your victory score. -1 victory point cards are going to take away from your score there. The game is over when all the cards flipped up. If all the cards are flipped up and none of them are resource cards, then the game is over. If at any point in time there's an empty spot on the board like so, and there are no cards left in the draw pile, then the game ends then as well. So at the end of the game, person with the most victory points is the winner. If for some reason there's a tie, player with the most resource cards is the winner. If there's still a tie, they all share in that victory. Tumbleweed's a great game with lots of variations too. You can play in teams. You can play with some variations on the Death Storm card and make that operate a little bit differently in that mechanic. But fun game, you should give it a try. Thank you.